What's up, everyone? This is Anthony with Trigger Warning Conjugate. Welcome to part 3 of our Instagram Q&A. I hope you guys enjoy this. If you guys have any other questions, make sure to drop us a line, message, like, comment, what have you. Thanks for your support, and I hope this helps. Danny O'Donnell, would you rather see a non-competitive client squat 500 to an inch or two below parallel, or take 600 to an inch or two above parallel, and why? So for someone who's not competing, I don't think it's important that they hit depth necessarily. I think they should train below parallel, but if that's not something that they want to do, it doesn't bother me if they're not going to be competing. If they're an athlete, if they have knee issues, hip issues, a high box, there is a place for that. Even if you're a competitive powerlifter, I think there's a place for a high box in training every so often. That's sort of personal preference. If it fits their training, I think either one could be good. So 500 a couple inches below, 600 a couple inches above, they could both work for the same client. Just depends on where they are in their training cycle and in their their strength journey or whatever you want to call it. It just depends on what they need at that time. I don't really have a preference specifically which one I'd like to see. Peanut Butter Shelly Time. Excellent Instagram name. How to choose the most beneficial accessory work for your weaknesses. So the first thing is you want to do is identify what those weaknesses are, and that could be a whole other video series. But once you find them, you want to rotate your exercises until you find the ones that are having the big enough carryover that you want to continue using them. You'll find exercises that you say, oh, I don't really feel like this gives me a carryover, don't do those anymore, but don't forget about them. Keep them in the back of your head, because eventually the ones that you're using now that are helping you are going to stop working, and you're going to want to bring in those other ones that didn't work before, because they probably will work at that point. It's basically trial and error. What works for me might not necessarily work for you. You'll find the ones that work and ride that train until it's dead. That's the one. You ride those, and then when they stop working, you find something else. But it does take a little bit of trial and error to figure out which ones are going to have specific carryover for you. So either a coach or a training partner can kind of help you, but a big thing is monitoring your strength gains with journaling and making sure you're writing everything down. That makes a big difference, because you can look back and say, well, a year ago I was doing JM presses and my bench is going up. I stopped doing those and now my bench isn't going up. I'll add those back in because I know they were helping me then. So it's really about taking control of that and looking at it from a broader spectrum and being like, what was I doing a year ago when I wasn't getting better? What have I added in since then? And using those tools. Sun Gallus Strength. Videos of technique breakdowns and common conjugate movements, competition movements, what the breakdown means as far as weaknesses and exercises with the highest degree of effectiveness transfer to address these areas. That has to be a whole other video, because I have to make videos of those movements, but that's a really good question. Caffeinated Lumberjack. What do the variations of main lifts, accessory work, and volume look like for athletes running conjugate compared to powerlifters running a typical conjugate type program? So this could be a pretty involved answer, but generally it's going to be the same thing. I would have athletes that I've worked with in the past do a lot more footwork, some more explosive sled work, but as far as variations are concerned and volume, it's about the same. I would say that a athlete probably has a little more volume if you add in the sprinting or the plyometrics that they're going to do. I have found it to be effective with football players and basketball players and the like, to have them do more contrast training, where they might pull a speed deadlift and then do jumps off a box, or doing plyometric with weights on their ankles, in their hands, weighted vests, what have you. That sort of thing really had a lot of carryover that I might not necessarily have my powerlifters do. So the more athletic type movements will help them, but an athlete will get stronger and faster doing just the basic conjugate template. And then what you want to have is someone with more sports specificity and knowledge in that to help them. I'm not going to teach anyone how to swing a baseball bat effectively. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give them the tools, so that when they do have a batting coach, that batting coach has a player with all the tools in the toolbox to help them have the most effective swing that they can have. Because I'm not a baseball coach, but I can help you get stronger and more explosive in the areas that will help you in that in that specific sport. So box squatting, max effort, speed work, speed bench, all these things will have carryover to sports, and then you use those strengths and explosiveness to train the sport specifically. 2C Navarro asks, how do you address pain? Do you try and do your own investigative work, modify your lifts, or do you seek evaluation by orthopedist, PT, strength coach, etc.? Well, there's a lot of great resources out there. If you YouTube stuff with Kelly Starrett, a lot of times you can find quick fixes for things. For more in-depth stuff, I do have a PT that I go to, Dr. Debbie, Hybrid Strength and Performance. She's really good with like the RPR system, Graston, needling, all that sort of stuff. What you want to do is find someone who's reputable, someone who's worked with powerlifting, who knows powerlifting. They're not going to say, you need to take 6 months off. They're going to say, let's work through this and figure out how you can keep training. But I do think it's important to find a PT that you know has helped people that you know, or know has helped people on a high level, because there is a lot of garbage out there, and there's a lot of people who don't know what they don't know. So especially with powerlifting, where it's kind of a niche community, I think it's important to find people that know that specific sport and can help you. Dewey Powdyall asks, how would you structure dynamic effort work with field, court, ice athletes, knowing that they also have to get in their plyometric jumping, bounding, and med ball work? Would you do dynamic effort work throughout an entire off season, or would you have more of a focus on building strength early on, then put in dynamic effort in late off season, so they start working towards a speed strength end of the continuum as they prep for preseason? I would say that not much changes on and off season for athletes when it comes to conjugate training, other than maybe in season backing off a little bit on the volume. Other than that, it should basically stay the same. They should be able to recover. Now, a lot of times you have to go 2 or 3 times, only 2 to 3 times a week instead of 4 times a week, and you can figure out what you need. If the person lacks in absolute strength, then you would work on that. If they lack in speed, you can do that. But as far as like the plyometric stuff and their bounding and their med ball work, that can be worked in as accessories. That can be worked in as part of the training. It doesn't have to be a separate thing. So some of your accessories for your lower day could be plyometric, box jumps and whatnot, med balls, sleds, all that stuff. You can work that stuff in as an accessory. It doesn't have to be a separate thing. Now, if they have stuff they have to do with their coach and you're the coach for the strength on the side, it's a little different. You have to work out with them what they can recover from and what their coaches are asking of them. There's a difference between preparing an athlete for a sport and preparing an athlete for their coach, because sometimes their coaches want them to do stuff that might not necessarily carry over to their sport. It's just what they're used to doing because they're an old school coach. So I think that's important, to have the dialogue with the kids or the athletes or whatever, so that you have that open dialogue where they can say, I'm feeling too beat up, I can't do this, I have to do this with my coach later, and so on. And it's different for everyone, but typically I would say it stays about the same through the whole season. Maybe back off the volume when in season, and you just want to do the least amount you can do to have the desired training effect and move on. All right, so that wraps up part 3 of our Instagram Q&A. I hope you guys enjoyed this series. If you have any further questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us. We love helping people get stronger. We'll see you guys next time.